Hey, my name's Keith, and I wrote a book about The Last of Us called The Last of Us Surviving the Super Apocalypse, where I played through the whole game without picking up any items and just talked about it and how cool it is. So if you'd like to read the book, you can get it for free at keithcourage.com. Please feel free to do that. There's like occasional little parts in the book too that didn't make it into this audio recording because either as I was recording or as I was editing, I was like, that's stupid. So if you want to read the stupid parts that really suck, they're in the book. This is, let's see, part 4 of this recording, although these recordings are not really lined up to specific events necessarily. So right now we're midway through Boston. We're about to arrive at the Capitol building. And, well, I mean, come on, you know the spoiler, right? You know it. Trouble for Tess. Let's just say that. I recorded this on a beach in Vancouver, by the way, so prepare for some serious ocean sounds. All right, here we go. Clickers. Joel finds a clicker corpse embedded in a door and pulls it free. There are a lot of spores in the air, but nobody seems too worried. Maybe that's why it doesn't matter if spores get on your clothes. Maybe they need to be super fresh. Straight from an infected's balls and right into your nostrils. I do wonder, if I had had an editor for this book, I wonder what notes I would have got. Like, I feel like if I were the editor, I would put a little mark next to that and say, not great. You don't need to change it, but you should know that it's not great. A live clicker then attacks Joel. Fuck, shit! He takes 2 units from my 5-unit health bar. Asshole! Cock! I wonder what happens if you get to this point with only 1 health unit. I assume Joel would survive the attack, but if somebody wants to check that for me, drop me a line. And hey, at least this violent thrashing will give Tess or Ellie a reason to scrounge me up a health pack. When a crazed monster attacks, you gotta look on the bright side. You gotta. Now that clickers have been introduced, they're gonna be a continuous part of my worthless goddamn life. So we're sneaking past a couple of the motherfuckers, and I like how you have to crawl super slowly. Crawling at top speed can still get you spotted. Moving that slowly makes things feel real tense. The clicker's one-hit kill also makes things pretty intense. I don't think the clicker bite is the literal moment of Joel's death, the way the other death animations are. The way clickers tear the flesh from Joel's neck is pretty bad, but not as bad as the other deaths. Maybe the clicker attack is just a shorthand for, you've been infected and therefore are functionally dead. So game over, bucko. Another shorthand game over is when a companion dies. Realistically, Joel would just carry on from there. Me and my friend Matt had an idea for when Ellie dies. The game should cut to a scene of Joel in the future, sitting at a table by himself. He's eating a meal, he's looking sad, then he stands on a chair, fashions a noose, and hangs himself. Then the game waits on that scene for a long, long time. And it should be unskippable. Feel free to hire us to help design your game, because we're really not doing anything. Insta-kill. The clicker's one-hit kill not only makes the game more intense, but also supports the fiction of how the cordyceps virus managed to take over the world. It don't matter how fast a zombie can run, those jerks ain't taking over the world. The spore system seems more plausible, and these clickers are demonstrably bad motherfuckers. I was surprised to learn that the clickers only became one-hit kill enemies a week before the first major Last of Us demo. For the first and possibly only time, I remember the source of this information. It was from Steve Gaynor's Tone Control podcast. Neil Druckmann talked about some different iterations of Last of Us, like how there was originally an evade button, but players learned that the best strategy was to wait for an attack, then evade, and it killed a lot of the tension, so they removed it. Then at some point, somebody tried making the clickers ultra dangerous, and that decision stuck. The design of The Last of Us seems very tight and deliberate, so it's interesting to hear how it was subject to the same design chaos as every other game is. If it's a miracle that movies ever turn out well, with all of their disparate parts, it must be a double miracle when a game comes together. That's all you need to make a big budget game. An amazing idea, a cadre of geniuses, and at least one double miracle. No problem. Areas unloading. As soon as we climb over the barrier away from the clickers, their clicking sounds immediately stop. That actually happens quite a lot in this game. The most obvious instance is in the underpass at the very end of the game. That place is loaded with infected, but as soon as you climb over the truck to escape the section, all of their sounds immediately stop. I assume that's because of the PS3's limited memory, the game having to dump everything that's behind you in preparation for what's coming up. But it is a bit jarring. First major encounter with the infected. We come to the first major roadblock, the section of the building where Joel drops down on his own and has to kill some infected before the group can progress. There are a few runners and a clicker, and this is actually a great example of why people don't play games on hard difficulty. On my first playthrough, this fight took me something like 16 tries. I was getting pretty frustrated and finally decided to sleep on it. Then the next day, I beat it with no problem. This is where I think Naughty Dog games can make a certain type of person especially annoyed. Because Uncharted and The Last of Us have stories that people actually want to see, getting waylaid by bad guys can become hard to tolerate. Having to sleep on a fight should be no big deal, and for an old school game, that kind of challenge would only be natural. You're not supposed to walk into each situation as some kind of demigod. You're supposed to slowly get better. But if you're playing a game mainly for its story, and don't want to take the time to master a game's mechanics, then situations like this are really gonna grate. I don't really have any sympathy for those folk. If you want a movie, then go watch a fucking movie. I'm just saying that I get it, bro. I understand your childish, entitled feelings. So take that. Get good, fuckface. Hardcore games. I actually kind of liked how brutal The Last of Us felt during that first playthrough. It seemed so oppressive and so relentlessly bleak that I eventually started to question if the people in this situation should even keep fighting. Is it really worth staying in this world, let alone trying to save it? The Last of Us is an emotionally draining game to play, and is definitely not what I would call a traditionally fun experience. But that just adds to its genius. In a time when big-budget games are often criticized for being guided tours, and criticized for lack of innovation in general, The Last of Us walks some pretty weird goddamn lines. The Last of Us isn't usually described as a hardcore game, but I think it kinda is. Hardcore games have an initially crushing difficulty curve, but that difficulty leads them to become more satisfying than their contemporaries. Far Cry 2, Demon's Souls, Spelunky, NetHack, those aren't games that most people would speak of in the same breath as The Last of Us. But it's my book, so I will. If you crank up the difficulty on The Last of Us, it is one hardcore survival game. And now it's been said. So, good, then. Joel versus Clicker. These runners should be no serious problem, but now that I'm in the super apocalypse, I'm not sure how to deal with this Clicker. I can't punch him, so I might have to bend the rules and pick up a melee weapon, or I could use some of my precious bullets. I skipped picking up the revolver on the way here, and I always wondered what would happen if I didn't pick up the various weapons. Will they show up again later? Will they magically be added to my inventory the next time I die? Or are they just gone? I still can't get used to the idea that the infected can't see my flashlight. so I keep it off just to put myself at ease. Goddamn, the fucking infected are so creepy. The way they lurch around, the sounds they make, they're so erratic. And when you get into a fist fight with them, it seems fairly random as to who will land the first blow. I can't make any mistakes or everyone will start running at me. It's pretty late at night as I'm playing this. The house is empty, and I'm feeling a bit nervous. 5 seconds after writing that, I fucked up, alerted an infected, and got killed. Fuck. Infected are much, much harder to deal with than human opponents. I'm getting destroyed. I'm trying to remember my 2 Dark Souls mantras. Slower is faster, and it's only difficult until you've done it. Keep the faith. Stay calm. Slowly take these guys out until it's just me and the clicker. Then beat his brains in. Are these stalkers or runners? I'll be honest, I have no idea what the difference is. The Last of Us wiki says stalkers are rare, so I guess these aren't them. I think stalkers are the enemies who always seem to hear you creeping up. Like in the Pittsburgh sewers or under the hotel. Who knows? I guess the guy who's writing a whole book about this goddamn game should know, but I'm afraid I do not. Holy shit, these pricks are hard. I managed to kill all the runners, and the clicker is stumbling around. I should pick up a crowbar and bash his head in, but I read on the wiki that you can sometimes get up to 3 punches on a clicker before he kills you. Could I punch him in the back of the head and just run away? I give it a go. I sneak up behind him, carefully, and he fucking eats my neck immediately, so fuck that. I'm gonna bash this fucker's head in good. There's another revolver in this arena, so that confirms that if you miss picking up a weapon, the game must just keep seeding them to you throughout. Keith cheats and feels disappointed in himself. So I'll mention right now that there are times early in this playthrough I was really rattled. Like, I was really nervous I wouldn't be able to do it. And then I just felt like, what if I can't? Like, I set this goal for myself. Let's try to beat The Last of Us without picking up any items. And I was like, well, what if I fail, though? What if I get a little ways in and I fail? And then what if I just never write this book? Because that's kind of the crux of the whole thing. What if I just let this project fall apart? And I didn't want that to happen. So it really put this extra stress on me, you know? It's like that fear you feel like playing Resident Evil and you're just scared to die, but for no real reason. It's just a video game. You're going to be fine, you know? It's a similar thing. There's weird meta stakes that make things scary. And I was really especially hung up on the high school bloater. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. What if I get to him and I don't have enough weapons to kill him? It turns out, as I'll describe later in the book, I didn't have to worry about any of this. The game gives you a surprising number of things, like Bill's going to force a shotgun into my inventory and also a nail bomb. I end up having more than enough stuff to take out the high school bloater. All throughout the game, everything's fine, but there's these early parts where I break my own rule, and just because I was scared, man. Just because I was a wuss. So way at the end of the book, because it's going to stick in my mind the whole time. Like, I can't believe that I picked up a couple little items, even though it was totally inconsequential and it didn't matter. That is extra why I can't believe I did it. Because if I had just been more brave, I would have found that it was fine. So at the very end, I go back and replay some of these sections just to make sure, just to prove that I really didn't need to pick up these things that I picked up. So, yeah, that's the little pre-disclaimer. I pick up this fucking crowbar thing, and I think I pick up a brick later, and I didn't need to. But I need to, what's that thing in church? Confession. I need to absolve myself. So, Keith cheats and feels disappointed in himself. After about 10 tries, it's down to me and the clicker. I should really just shoot the prick, but I want to save my bullets for the bloater in the high school gym, and punching this fucker does not seem to be working. So, weak man that I am, I grab a 2x4 from the ground and finish him off. It takes 4 hits to drop them, and the board then breaks apart in my hands. So that worked out pretty cleanly. But I broke my Super Apocalypse rules. I picked up a board. Get it together, Keith. There have to be other ways. When you get to the Ellie section, you can pick up whatever you want. No more of this just one 2x4 shit. I'm giving you this one, and that's it. Shape up, soldier. These self-made, bizarre, difficult alternate playthroughs, it reminds me of the speedrunning community, because I guess that is basically also what they're doing. It's like an alternate way to play a game that's much more difficult. And it's just such a neat thing. Like, you put these constraints on yourself and you just find a way to do it. People figure out a way to do it. And it really does bring back a lot of, like I talked about earlier, with the differences between old school games and modern games, where modern games just feel sort of flabby and loose, and it's like, well, we want everybody to be able to get to the end, so nothing is going to be too hard, which is the diametric opposite of old school arcade games, where there either was no end or just no end you were ever expected to get to. You know, that game is just designed to fuck you hard and fast so you can put another quarter in. So it's kind of neat, like the alternate playthroughs and trying to speedrun or trying to limit your options. It's just, it's fun because it brings back that feeling, that sense of what old games were like. And if developers ain't gonna do it, then it's just up to us, man. We gotta do it for ourselves. We gotta give ourselves these weird parameters. And yeah, I love it. I love it. It's just such a neat little way of just stretching human ingenuity and just like, let's just figure out. And I mean, what I'm doing, playing through The Last of Us without picking up items, it's nothing compared to like some of the crazy ass speedruns people do and the exploits that they discover. It's like, it's fucking nuts. But it's all like coming from the same place of like, I want to test myself. I want to prove that I can solve this puzzle box. And I love it. It's so cool. The subway. In celebration of my manly victory, Tess gives me the components to craft a health kit. She doesn't know the shame I brought on myself and my ancestors by picking up a piece of wood. So, I shan't craft it. It's time to get back into the spirit of this ridiculous endeavor. The real-time item creation and real-time inventory management system in this game is so cool. I'm basically sidestepping it during this playthrough, which is one reason why I wouldn't actually recommend this playthrough to anyone. Crafting on the fly is fun. Rummaging through your backpack in a desperate situation is fun. Salivating at the idea of picking up a stick, less fun. We head down into an abandoned subway tunnel where a bunch of clickers are spread around. While sneaking, my impulse is still to press the stick harder to get away from them faster. Even after all the times I've played this game, clickers still scare me. One could shamble up behind me and get an instant kill at any moment. But I can't press the stick harder, or they'll hear me. It's like I'm in a nightmare where I'm trying to get away, but I can only move very slowly. That one little mechanic of the slow crawl is so genius. At the end of the subway tunnel, there's a ladder laying on top of a wall. It can't be pulled down until the nearby clicker is led away. I spent some time messing around with him. It turns out you can punch a clicker and still run away, as long as he's unaware of you. So maybe I could have punched that last clicker to death if I had immediately run away and hid? But once a clicker is in a frenzy, I don't know if you can punch them at all. In this case, attacking the clicker makes every other enemy go insane, so that's out of the question. This is basically a tutorial, so I think I'm guilt-free in picking up another item. Oh, are you? Are you guilt-free, or are you going to be guilted by it for the rest of your life? Don't do it, Keith. Don't do it. Future you is looking back and you didn't need to. You don't need to pick up these items. There's a brick and a Molotov on the floor, and the Molotov will surely wake everyone up, but let's try it. The Molotov kills the clicker and attracts one other clicker, He runs over to investigate and sets himself on fire as well, and that's good enough for me. Is that really what I did? God, I cheated so much in this early part. Fuck. I just was like, I had guns in my inventory, I had bullets, but I just was so terrified of the goddamn high school bloater. I'm like, I can't use my bullets. I need to pick these items up. Oh, I was so young and foolish then. What a little wuss. What a little wuss bag. Yeah, pick up the Molotov. Oh, little baby, you need your Molotov? Scared of the clicker? Fuck you, myself. It just occurred to me that I could have made a Molotov out of the health kit ingredients Tess gave me, instead of picking up the one on the ground. Fuck, I keep fucking up my own playthrough. This book is called The Super Apocalypse, not the pick up a stick and a Molotov jamboree. Christ. See, even myself at the time was disappointed, myself now is disappointed. If I ever have grandkids, I hope that they're disappointed in me that I picked up a 2x4 and a Molotov, you fuck. And I'm sure I pick up a brick in Billstown. Oh, the shame. No, and speaking of, this is interesting, this is the next paragraph. I had a girlfriend who claimed that my predilection towards shame was due to my Catholic upbringing. I thought that sounded a bit reductive, but hey, you never know. You know what, I think she probably nailed it. In hindsight, now, looking at the totality of things. That part too, it's just so boring of just like, oh, I just picked up the Molotov and I did the tutorial. The part at the end when I go back and replay these sections, man, it is fucking crazy, that part, because I also cranked it up even more. Just for the fuck of it, I put it on grounded difficulty. And man, the contortions I had to go through to get past that one clicker. It's one of those cases where if you don't do what the tutorial wants, it's just ludicrous how much the game fights back against you. But it's so interesting. It's like instructive to do these things and to kind of fuck with the game and do what it doesn't expect. Because especially in early tutorial areas, like it's one of those things that is such a catch-22 that tutorials can be the hardest part of a game because it's when games they just behave differently than usual because they're trying to help you with this tutorial. But if you come at the tutorial the wrong way, it's like then suddenly the fucking hounds of hell are marshaled against you, and it's just such a bizarre thing about modern games. But that's coming. Way at the end of the book. Something to look forward to. Jesus Christ, birds, what is your deal? Hey, what the fuck, man? Chill. We climb the ladder and head down an alley, where Joel starts opening a garage door. Tess hears some zombies and says, "Okay, double time." I think that one little command sums up Tess and Joel's relationship. Joel is not good at managing his own life. He wants someone like Tess to steer the ship. She gives commands, and he follows. After Tess dies, it must be crushingly difficult for Joel to look after Ellie on his own. And later, when it becomes clear that Ellie can look after herself, and is in fact capable of helping Joel manage his life, Joel must feel bound to Ellie even more. But surely nothing bad will come of that. It's bonding. It's nice. The museum. I pass up some pills, and I spit at a workbench as I walk by. Really, life without items isn't going so badly. Games always give you way more resources than you need. And it kind of blows my mind to realize that I could have avoided both the 2x4 and the Molotov that I picked up. Hoarding. I've always been a hoarder in games. I'm the guy who would get to the end of Final Fantasy II on the SNES with 99 of everything, because I was saving them all for a rainy day that never came. I like the limited inventory of The Last of Us, as it forces you to use what you have. It gives the game a better flow, and forces players not to act so compulsive and desperate. It's the freedom of being constrained, which is zen, dude. That's, I think, becoming a common pattern in this book. It's like, well, I don't quite know how to end this little segment, so I'll just end it by saying something fucking stupid. Multiply that by 180 times, and you got a book. The Uncharted Connection. This museum looks a bit like the museum in Uncharted 3. The bar from Uncharted 3's intro shows up later in Pittsburgh. Uncharted 3 also has a newspaper with a headline that mentions a strange fungal outbreak. These are just little nods to the fact that both games were in development concurrently and not intended as literal connections between the worlds. But it's weird to think that, right after Uncharted 3, maybe Drake started sprouting shit from his head and died? Along with everyone else on Earth? That'd take some of the wind out of the sails of that franchise, that's for sure. Little did I know Uncharted 4 would take all the wind out of the sails of the franchise anyway. Oh! Said I wasn't going to go there, but I went there. There's also an Uncharted board game in Pittsburgh. So that makes The Last of Us the dominant universe, right? Uncharted is just a game in the harsh reality of The Last of Us. When people die here, it's not some weird demon dream. Clusterfuck at the museum. Some infected get the drop on us, and this is where Tess gets bitten. Long sleeves and turtlenecks, guys, and some gloves. Maybe a custom-fitted turtleneck-style leather jacket. It might not be comfortable, but it'd stop some bites. And maybe some people wouldn't be dead. That's really all you can ask for in a jacket. This run-in with the infected leads to a full-blown fight, and holy goddamn fuck. There are about 5 runners who are all angry and yelling, and 3 more that come through the window midway through the battle. It's a total clusterfuck, and I quickly accept that I'm gonna have to take some damage. But then, after a few tries, I make it most of the way through the encounter without a scratch, and I start to think that I might be able to pull this off. I used the magical rule of The Last of Us, which is that you can outrun almost anything. There's very limited space in this museum, but there might be a way through this. I put on a podcast and I just zone the fuck out. I play the fight over and over for about 20 minutes straight. It turns out it's not too hard to get the drop on a runner. You just have to throw your punch really early. If another infected is behind you or beside you, you'll take phantom damage from them slashing at you, even if you can't see them. Or you'll get grabbed outright. So fighting in the open doesn't work. But if you can get a single infected near a wall or bookcase, Joel will smash their head right into it. Then you can run like a fucking deer and try to find another advantageous situation. So I run around this room, waiting for times when enemies are alone, rushing over to rescue Tess or Ellie whenever I need to. I use what I learned from trying to punch that clicker. A fist fight doesn't have to be to the death. You can give 1 or 2 quick punches, then just run the fuck away. It's a total mess of a fight, and I'm sure there's a lot of luck involved. The reason I'm sure of that is because it takes about 50 tries before I make it through untouched. But I do it. I somehow take out all of these crazy bastards with only my fists and without taking any damage. Game within a game. You might think that trying to perfectly complete this battle with only my fists is a massively pointless waste of time. And of course, it is. But I like to think of it as a throwback to the way video games used to be. The multimedia extravaganza storytelling form of video games is a relatively new thing. Games used to be almost entirely about a mechanical challenge, and I still liked those. In some ways, I liked them more. I wasn't playing to see the next cutscene or to learn about a story. I was playing the game to get better at playing the game. Imagine an alternate world where video game technology improved, but games never developed elaborate stories. What if this were one of those games? It could be called Zombie Museum, and the goal would be to punch out zombies. You couldn't get hurt because then you'd become a zombie. So it'd be a really hard game. But shit, I'd play that. I played My Hero on the Sega Master System about 500 times, and Zombie Museum is way more fun than that game. As I've said, I think it's a focus on the overall story that makes being stuck frustrating. When you focus on a single fight as its own activity, playing it over and over again is fun. It's like a fluid puzzle, and the goal is to find a way through. Fluid puzzles. One reason I hate conventional puzzles in video games is because they're so rigid. The whole game stops cold while I try to figure out which way to turn a statue with an emblem of a penguin on it. That stuff drives me nuts. But figuring out how to get through a room full of enemies is also a puzzle. It's a fluid puzzle, and it takes a different kind of thinking to solve. Spending 20 minutes thinking through a rigid, conventional puzzle is totally unacceptable to me. It's torture. The payoff is not remotely worth the effort. But a fluid puzzle, such as a real-time, reflex-based combat puzzle, is fun to spend 20 minutes trying to solve. That kind of fast-paced, interactive combat puzzle is also something that's unique to video games. I guess it could be simulated in reality, with a mass shooting, but I think we can agree that mass shootings fall outside the traditional definition of a puzzle. We can all agree on that, right? If you can't, try to talk to someone about it. Do not shoot people. Do not. I can't stress that enough. Try shooting them a smile instead. See how that feels? Pretty good, right? There you go. You're all right. That's it? That's the end of that segment? Okay, sure. Far Cry 2? Far Cry 2. Idle Thumbs reference. In difficult games, hyper-focusing on individual sections and treating each as its own game can be a very effective technique. In crazy hard games, that segmentation can get pretty heavy. For example, in Far Cry 2 on its hardest difficulty, a mission is not a mission. A mission is more like 30 missions. Getting to the road is a mission. Waiting for a truck is a mission. Waiting patiently in a video game is a surprisingly hard mission. Commandeering that truck is a mission. Driving to the next fork in the road is a mission. Everything needs to be compartmentalized and treated as the most important aspect of what's going on. You can't expend mental resources thinking about the end of the chain, or even the next link in the chain. Whatever's happening right now is all that's important. And that's why hard games are cool. Far Cry 3 was fun, but there's no way it got that intense for anybody ever. Rhodium Trophy. I don't know what rhodium is, but on a list of elements it was above platinum. After accomplishing the crazy stunt of punching out all the museum zombies without taking damage, I realized that I may be the only person who has ever done that. Not because of its difficulty. If a request went out, there'd be 2,000 videos of it on YouTube tomorrow. But who else would try this? What would lead them to do it? It's obscure enough of a task that I honestly might be the only one. I don't care how dumb an accomplishment that is. It still feels pretty cool. Cool in the relative sense. I'll bask in that glory for a few moments before I go check YouTube. Glory. On YouTube, several people have done no damage runs, but they're all picking up items. Sure, they're not taking any damage, but they're also shooting the shit out of people. They have bricks. As discussed earlier, Joel can murderize anything with a brick. I really think I might be the only one dumb enough to have done this fight two-fisted. And in a mere 50 tries. Magical. So this brings us to an official new chapter in this book, the Capitol building. So at each major chapter break in the book, I recap what my current inventory situation is. So right now, I have 3 out of 5 health, which I believe I lost that health just because of that cutscene where you first encounter a clicker and you have no choice but to take damage from it. I have 4 9mm bullets from when I first picked up the 9mm, because you have to pick up the gun and Joel's book bag, his backpack, before you can proceed. I have 1 unit of cloth and 1 unit of alcohol that Tess gave me earlier to build a health pack out of. Still running pretty minimal. Not a lot of stuff in Joel's inventory. Keeping it cool, keeping it calm, keeping it flexible. We get out of that fucking shitbag museum and walk across a plank between buildings, heading toward the Capitol building. Joel looks down at his broken watch, the watch his daughter gave him on the day that she died. I never really noticed that glance until someone else pointed it out. But once you see it, it's a nice moment. This part seems appropriate to the waves crashing on the beach. As we near the Capitol building, Ellie says, just so it's out there, I can't swim. You sure can't, Ellie. You sure can't. But I'm sure that won't cause any issues. The Fireflies aren't at the Capitol building, and Tess scrambles to try to figure out where they might be. Joel raises his voice. "It is over, Tess!" Showing just how uninvested he is in helping to find this cure. He's even willing to yell at his boss, which I reckon he doesn't do too often. But Tess feels the opposite way. She reveals that she's been bitten, and that this girl must absolutely be taken safely to the Fireflies. Once Tess sees the spark of salvation, it takes a hold of her pretty hard. Joel versus Tess. We all know that we're gonna die, and we generally ignore that fact. We live our lives like they're not gonna end. It'd be hard to function if we couldn't block out the truth of our own mortality. Being in the waning days of humanity must feel like that, except the feeling is spread out over the entire species. You know that it's gonna be over soon, but all you can do is put it out of your head and just carry on. Coming across a potential cure must feel a bit like finding a method for immortality. Every day, you're ignoring the fact that you have to die. Then suddenly, you feel that weight go away. You see a future where you don't have to die. If there was a chance, even the smallest chance that you could supersede death, nothing else would feel even remotely as important. I imagine that's how Tess must feel. Every day she was living with the knowledge that her species was about to flicker out. Then, out of nowhere, there's an escape. There's a way that the human race could keep on living. If this cure works, then we don't have to die. As a species, we can keep going. We can be back to how we used to be, pretending that we'll live forever. Clinging to that hope is a natural reaction. Even for someone as hardened as Tess, potential salvation would become all-encompassing. What's maybe more notable isn't that Tess falls so easily under the thrall of a cure. It's that Joel doesn't. Even with a demonstrably immune person standing right in front of him, he still doesn't care. He just wants to go back to his regular life and to wait for everybody to die. That attitude seems pretty monstrous, and I'll bring up many times throughout this book how Joel is a really shitty person. But his attitude is also something I can empathize with. A human being on this earth killed his daughter. And if that's what humans do, then fuck them. Something truly irreplaceable has been taken from his life. So to Joel, all the people he's killed in the interim, it's just payback. None of humankind deserves to be here, so killing them doesn't mean much. And eventually, Mother Nature will complete the process and everyone will be gone for good. As super fucked up as that is, I kinda can't blame the guy. If most of the people in the ensuing 20 years have been exploitative scavengers, killing each other in some pointless bid for temporary survival, then what reason would Joel have for wanting to save them? The idea of humanity being washed away might seem like a calming proposition. The animals could have the earth, and all of this could be done. Tess's death. Tess's character arc is a little hard to see, but I do really like it. It only sunk in for me in hindsight. During the game proper, Tess's characterization as the baddest badass in Badass Town can obscure her true personality. She's tough, she's in charge, and 1,000 other stories with characters like that have taught us that that's probably all we'll ever need to know about her. We also don't have much time to think about Tess. We don't really get to meet her until this moment, and then we're already on the run, leaving her behind. Tess's sacrifice doesn't help Joel and Ellie much. It's more about her wanting a clean exit to avoid becoming an infected. Soldiers are coming, and it's better to end it now, while she still has the nerve. Death by cop. If Tess held on and stayed with Joel and Ellie, one of them would soon have to kill her. It's a kindness that she's not willing to put either of them through that. As I've said, the more I play The Last of Us, the more I agree with Joel's view of the Fireflies. Their brand of hope arguably only makes life harder. With that in mind, it's doubly sad to see Tess's final moments. Just like everyone else, she wants to believe. She wants the notion of hope to be real. She wants to be redeemed. But all she has to hold on to are the Fireflies. Man, thinking about Tess's death, I'm making myself a little upset. Shake it off, man, shake it off. Come on, do a little dance. Do a little dance. Doing a little dance on the beach. Sorry that you're dead, Tess, sorry that you're dead. But maybe things will be okay. I don't think that they will. Hey there, Tess. Tessie boy, you are dead. Okay, that's enough. Fucking with the boundaries. Joel and Ellie leave Tess behind to get shot by soldiers, and it's very sad. But let's spring immediately back to game testing mode. If, instead of running forward, you run back toward Tess's body, it really messes with the enemy spawning. They start popping up in weird places that don't really make sense. On my first playthrough, I did what the game wanted, running up the stairs and along the prescribed path. But the second time, I had to try messing with the system. I blame Metroid for impulses like that. After Metroid, we all had to try going left in every game forever. What if there's something back there and we miss it? What if going back to Tess's body revealed some great secret? It didn't, it just made the game behave oddly, but I had to try it. Infection philosophy. If I were infected by the cordyceps virus, I think I'd let myself progress rather than kill myself. I'd be like that guy in Dawn of the Dead who said, "I'm gonna try not to come back." Sure, no one else had ever managed it, but it's like going left in Metroid. There's probably nothing there, but you gotta try. If your consciousness were still intact inside your infected body, that would be pretty horrifying. But given the severity of what the cordyceps does to the brain, literally splitting the skull open, it seems unlikely that there's any human consciousness left. So yeah, fuck it, man. Give it a try. Maybe I'd be like that guy Fox from Fallout 3, a rare case of an intelligent monster. I could be sitting there with a fungus growing out of my head, sipping on a cup of tea, talking about Metroid. You never know until you try. Escaping the Capitol building. Joel and Ellie run past the hunting rifle, which is hands down my favorite gun. Doing the little zoom in, getting a shaky bead on some jerk's head. Bang! I'm sad to see you go, partner. The next group of soldiers takes me a few tries, but it's nothing compared to that museum shit show. Good old humans, all hesitant and cautious. Even with their guns, they are so much easier to deal with than the infected. One of the especially gamey aspects of The Last of Us is that ammunition is abnormally scarce. People who should definitely have ammo on their corpses usually don't. It's easy to use some bullets to kill a guy and to not get any back in return. It's artificial, but I like it. It nudges the player toward using other strategies besides guns, and it adds to that overall sense of desperation. What I'm trying to say is that none of these guys are carrying shit. They brought exactly as many bullets as they thought they were going to need that day, and not a single bullet more. Downstairs are more soldiers, and I clear out the first batch with no trouble. But there are 2 or 3 soldiers left in the last room. I sit watching them, but they don't seem to want to break up. Throwing bottles can break enemies out of their preset patrol routines, causing them to move into other areas, but I can use no bottles. I keep watching them, and I look at the exit door, and I watch them. I know that if I screw this up, I gotta do the whole section over again. But fuck it, I'm just tired of watching these jerks. I book it, running for the door as fast as I can. I get outside and run down into the subway, leaving the yelling soldiers in the dust. Thank God Ellie can look after herself because I basically just left her behind. But it worked. I've never snuck past this section before, and it's great to learn that it's possible. This is what alternate playthroughs are all about. Twisting the game mechanics in order to force some risky, unusual decisions. Man, it feels good that I pulled that off. Fucking eat it, soldier boys. Which is easily the toughest thing I've ever said. Heading underground. Joel and Ellie enter the spore-filled subway tunnel and spot 2 soldiers searching for them. Ellie pulls Joel into cover, and he realizes that she's not wearing a gas mask. She's the real deal. To celebrate, he kills both soldiers and thinks curse words about them. Being down in these spore-filled subway tunnels, the game looks so spacey and drifty. This game runs at 30 frames per second because that's the most they could squeeze out of the PS3. But I really think it looks cool. In film, a higher frame rate always looks worse. It makes things look like they're shot on video. That's not generally the case for video games, but 30 frames still looks pretty good. The PS4 version does crank things up, but on PS3 I got no complaints. There's a smuggler's note in this tunnel which mentions a guy named Frank. He's been trading with people from Boston, and now he wants to get into the Boston QZ. But he never showed up to the meeting. Could this be Bill's partner, Frank? Once Frank split from Bill, heading into Boston would make sense. Frank also had a working car, so his plan may have been to hit the road. But leaving on your own has got to be pretty scary. Maybe the community of Boston seemed more appealing, despite the military presence. Either way, Frank was destined to miss this meeting, being as he's dead. The subway tunnel is partially submerged, and Joel's swimming controls are surprisingly intuitive. Maybe it's because his body moves into positions closer to what a real swimmer would, rather than staying straight as an arrow. Bad swimming can be brutal. Remember swimming in the original Tomb Raider? If not, then assume it was beautiful and sleep restfully. There's no need for you to know of the horrors that our generation had to overcome. Ellie cannot swim, so she rides on her first pallet. People complain about the frequency of these pallet puzzles, but I really don't think they're so bad. Just get into it. Look at how nervous she is, afraid that the pallet's gonna tip over. It's kind of charming. Though the pallet would probably be more stable if she didn't leap onto it like a maniac. We make our way back to the surface. Ellie does this goony little walk on the way out of the subway, gathering her resolve to try to apologize about what happened to Tess. Ellie's personality. It's hard to qualify exactly why, but I really buy Ellie as a character. She doesn't seem like a male character transposed into a female body, like a lot of tough female characters are. She's not overly girly, but she's not Ghost World snarky either. She just seems like a person. Extremely smart or extremely dumb characters are always paper thin. For example, every fucking anime character that has ever existed ever. Ellie is intelligent, but only to a level that makes her seem unique and slightly weird. She seems a bit out of touch with her gender, which could be a result of growing up in such a harsh environment. It's difficult to even describe, but she's just a goddamn good character. Note: it's interesting to see how I viewed Ellie's gender identity before the release of Left Behind. I seem to be sort of on the right track, but we'll get there. With some characters, I'm dying to learn more about them. I want to see what makes them tick. They're ciphers, representatives for some larger issue, or personifications of a psychological condition. And their circuit is aching to be completed. This might sound counterintuitive, but I'm less drawn toward learning about Ellie. I feel like seeing her behavior is all the information I need. She's not a cipher. She's not a storyline walking around waiting to be unraveled. She's a lot more complicated than that. Ellie's character isn't going to be summed up with one action or one revelation. Who she is already right there. Instead of feeling a drive to discover her or understand what she's all about, I just want to let her be. My mind wants to treat her as a person rather than as a story. It's a pretty amazing thing, and something that I don't feel about characters very often. I was going to say about video game characters, but yeah, something I don't feel about characters very often. I got to assume that Ellie's realism has a lot to do with actress Ashley Johnson. Maybe Neil Druckmann is the most super genius writer ever, but for a character to turn out this well, it's got to be something more fundamental than that. I've come to respect acting quite a lot. The right expression and the right intonation can tell more of a story than any monologue could hope to do. Ellie's apology. Ellie tries to apologize for her part in Tess's death, but Joel doesn't listen for very long. He says, "We can just keep our histories to ourselves." Ellie agrees without complaint, saying she'll follow whatever Joel says. But the look on Joel's face is so pissed. He wants a way out of this. Maybe he's angry that Ellie wasn't more petulant. If she had mouthed off to him in that moment, with Tess's death fresh on his mind, he might have been able to justify cutting her loose. But she demurred, not giving Joel an excuse to kick her to the curb. Facial expressions. The facial expressions in this game are insane. I love old school graphics. Out of This World is one of my favorite games, and Kentucky Route Zero looks awesome to me. Abstraction goes a long way towards successful video game storytelling. But you just can't deny these graphics. Christ, they're good. The Last of Us looks literally better than a movie. George Lucas used to talk about digitally altering takes to tweak facial expressions. In his hands, it sounded like a bad joke. But that's basically what a modern video game is. Different takes can be seamlessly stitched together, cameras and lighting can be altered at any time. As a result, these takes are perfect, and these expressions are flawless. Between a psychopath and a hard place. Ellie doesn't talk back to Joel, and she looks very uncomfortable. As an audience, we're inclined to accept this pairing just because it's the story that's been pre-sold to us. Ellie and Joel are the people on the box, so that's what this game is about. But thinking of the situation from Ellie's perspective, she is not in a good place. All she really knows about this guy is that he's a smuggler and a murderer whose partner has just fucking died. And she's got to follow this guy into the wilderness where she's never been? That's fucking terrifying, man. Outside the city. We jump ahead to the woods outside of Boston, and I got full life again. Nice, I didn't expect that. I think that is a pretty obvious episode break. This is basically the beginning of Billstown. So thank you once again for listening. I hope you have found this entertaining so far. If you would like to read the full book, it is called The Last of Us Surviving the Super Apocalypse by Keith McNally. And it is available in its entirety for free at keithcourage.com. So once again, thank you very much, and I will see y'all right here, where we will continue discussing our adventures in The Last of Us, and we will meet a motherfucker named Bill. Thanks again. Adios.